Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
David Seymour.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we are indeed a House of Representatives, and wasn't that 5 minutes of raging self-righteousness and very little to do with the bill. But, Mr. Speaker, this bill is a public policy abomination. It is one the ACT Party will be supporting because it is a budget commitment, and supporting budget commitments helps to keep those people over there and these people over here. And, Mr. Speaker, from what we've just heard, I thought it was important before Marama Davidson's speech, but now I think it's absolutely vital to the future of this country. Because, Mr. Speaker, the Labor members might be interested to know, I've just been reading a lot about the Right Honourable Norman Kirk, and wasn't Labor a great party when it was led by him? And I think most famously he said that New Zealanders want somewhere to live, someone to love, somewhere to work, and something to hope for. And I think it is a very important question for New Zealand in 2015. Why is it that it has become so much harder for a vastly more technically sophisticated society than we were 40 years ago, so much harder to provide places that people wish to live at prices they're able to afford? Some people might say the answer is don't have 7 kids if you're not entirely sure that you can afford to support them. But other people would say at least it should be easier to afford homes than it was 40 years ago. Some people say, oh, it's because of the free market. Well, Mr. Speaker, what sort of free market is it when the government has a monopoly on planning?
Order.
Mr. Speaker.
Now, I was, as the member pointed out, relatively lenient on the previous speaker, who was a new speaker with regard to relevance. This member is an experienced member now and the leader of a party, and he will follow the rules and speak to the bill.
Mr. Speaker, I am differentiating between supply and demand side measures when it comes to attacking housing affordability. And it is worth stating, Mr. Speaker, that we built, as an Auckland region, 5,000 houses a year throughout the 1990s and only 4,000 in the past decade. Mr. Speaker, that is the material reason for a lack of housing affordability in Auckland. And I think it's worth noting that it is not a free market when it is the government that is responsible for providing the infrastructure. This bill, Mr. Speaker, is a bill that will do nothing to help with housing affordability in Auckland, because nobody ever built more houses in order to pay more tax. And that is what at best might happen as a result of this bill. But as we heard in the excellent submissions to the Finance and Expenditure Committee, even that is going to occur to an extent less than real estate agents I know earn money in fees, less than $5 million a year in projected revenue. And that reflects the fact that, as we heard in submission, we are only going to take in revenue from those who own a second house, find themselves stranded and really can't sell. Everybody else who is involved in serious property investment will easily manage their affairs to avoid a 2-year bright line test. So, Mr. Speaker, it's with some regret, but suffice to say, as demonstrated by the previous speaker, some considerable necessity that I support this budget measure of the bright line test, but let it be put on record that this tax is the acorn of a capital gains tax. It is a measure that will grow from 2 years to 5 to 10 to 15 years. And you watch, Mr. Speaker, it will eventually apply to a wider range of homes. It is the acorn that the National Party has planted that will grow into a full-blown capital gains tax. And that, Mr. Speaker, from the point of view of those of us who believe in simple, market-oriented policies, those of us who want rational public policy for New Zealand, will view this as a very dark day indeed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Alistair Scott.